Today, we're going to trace a line from a simple monastery chant all the way to the epic score of your favorite video game. This is the thousand-year story of classical music. And let me tell you, it's a wild tale of power, rebellion, and the surprising bit of tech that turns sound itself into a product. So let's dive in.
Okay, so first things first, let's tackle the big question. When we say classical music, what are we actually talking about? Is it just, violins and powdered wigs? Well, the term is so much bigger, way more complex, and honestly, a lot more revolutionary than you might think.
And here's the first big surprise for most people. What we lump together as classical music is actually a tradition that stretches over a millennium, 1,000 years. And the actual classical period, the era of Mozart and Haydn, that's just one tiny little chapter in this enormous story. We're talking about a journey that goes from medieval chants right up to the modern day.
Now, for the first several centuries of its existence, this music really only served two masters, and they were very, very powerful: the church and the royal courts. This was not music for the people. It was an art form for the elite.
You have to imagine a world with no public concerts. It's hard to, right? But if you were a composer back then, you were basically an employee. You worked for the church or a king, and you wrote music on command for a specific mass, a royal wedding, a fancy dance. Your creativity served your patron, not some deep personal expression. It was a job, not this grand journey of self-discovery we think of today.
This quote from the late 17th century, it just perfectly captures the entire worldview of the time. Music had a divine purpose, simple as that, to glorify God. It was a tool for worship, a way to reflect heavenly order. But a kind of philosophical earthquake was rumbling, and it was about to completely reshape everything. And here it comes, the Enlightenment. It arrives like a tidal wave, bringing all these new ideas about reason, about individual rights, and about the role of art in society. Music was about to have its first great democratic revolution.
So, get this, just 100 years after music was called a gift of God, you have Dr. Charles Burney calling it an innocent luxury, something for the gratification of the sense of hearing. I mean, that is a monumental shift. The whole purpose of music was no longer just divine. It was now deeply human. It was meant for enjoyment, for pleasure.
So what was fueling this massive change? Well, it was the rise of a brand new, educated middle class. And all of a sudden, music moves out of those private courts and into public theaters. For the very first time in history, you could actually buy a ticket to go hear a symphony. This created a whole new market for exciting forms of entertainment that could really capture the public's imagination.
And believe me, nothing was more exciting than opera. It started out as this kind of nerdy, scholarly attempt to recreate ancient Greek drama, but it just exploded into the most popular, most spectacular form of entertainment in Europe. Seriously, forget the stuffy reputation you might have of it now. Back in the 18th century, a new opera premiere was like a blockbuster movie opening and a stadium rock tour all rolled into one.
The structure was actually pretty simple but incredibly effective. First, you've got the recitato. That's where characters kind of sing to each other to move the plot forward. And then, bam, everything freezes and one character just unloads all of their emotions in a big, memorable, show-stopping song called an aria. It's basically action followed by a musical close-up on what they're feeling.
This new public scene also created some new, though still very limited, opportunities for women. You have these amazing figures, like Mariana Martinez, who was a celebrated composer but couldn't perform for money because of her high social class. Or Duchess Anna Amalia, a literal ruler who composed operas. And then there's Louise Reichardt, who became a conductor, was never actually allowed to lead a performance in public. They were all navigating this brand new world full of possibilities and old restrictions.
All right, so the next revolution wasn't philosophical at all. It was technological. This is the moment when music stops being just an experience and becomes a product, something you could actually hold in your hands.
Now, the technology that made all this possible, it wasn't a new instrument or some complex musical theory. Nope, it was something far more fundamental, something that had already completely transformed the written word.
The year is 1498. We're in Venice, and a man named Ottaviano Petrucci gets a patent for printing music with movable type. Now, I know it might not sound as exciting as the invention of the electric guitar, but this single innovation was about to create the entire music industry as we know it. And the difference was, well, it was profound. Before printing, music was totally ephemeral. It existed only in a performance or in a few super precious handwritten manuscripts.
But after printing, a song became a physical object. It could be mass-produced, shipped all over the continent, and sold in a marketplace, completely separate from the composer or the performer.
And here is a fascinating little twist. You would think this new industry was built on selling complex church music or symphonies, right? Wrong. The exact opposite was true. The business boomed by selling books of popular songs. We're talking about the pop hits of the Renaissance. So the very first music industry was in fact a pop music industry.
So, by turning music into a product, the printing press created this middle layer, publishers, distributors, marketers, that stood between the artist and the audience. And that system, born over 500 years ago, has evolved, sure, but its core structure is still here. Today, that middle layer takes the vast majority of all music revenue, with artists on average getting only about 12%. It's a modern economic reality that started in a little print shop in Venice.
So, where does that leave us today? Is this thousand-year-old tradition just some kind of museum piece? Absolutely not. Its DNA is everywhere in the music we listen to every single day.
I mean, just think about the last epic movie you saw. That huge, sweeping orchestral score that's designed to make you feel all the emotions. That is a direct descendant of 19th century romantic opera and symphonies. It's basically Wagner and Strauss, just repackaged for the big screen.
Or hey, listen to the music in modern video games. The scores are often unbelievably complex. They're fully orchestral, and they're interactive, responding to what a player does in real time. This is genuinely one of the most vibrant and innovative places where the traditions of large-scale orchestral music are being kept alive and pushed into the future.
And let's not forget, for generations, cartoons were how so many of us first heard this music. Think of Bugs Bunny in What's Opera Doc, or Disney's absolute masterpiece Fantasia. These cartoons didn't just use classical music as background noise, they wove it into the very fabric of the story, introducing millions of kids to the classic.
So, after this pretty whirlwind tour through 1,000 years of history, what's the big picture? What should you take away from this incredible story?
Well, first, that classical music isn't one single thing, it's a constantly evolving story of change. Second, that change has always been driven by these huge outside forces. Social shifts, like the rise of the middle class, changed who was listening, while technological revolutions, from the printing press to Spotify, changed how we listen. And finally, its legacy isn't stuck in a concert hall. It is a living, breathing part of our modern world.
From a prayer chanted in a dark monastery to a pop song sold on the streets of Venice, all the way to the score of an interactive video game, this tradition has never, ever stopped changing. Which leaves us with a pretty fascinating question to think about. In our age of AI and global streaming, what does the next note in this 1,000-year-long song even sound like?